Yoko Ono, an iconic figure in art and music, has lived a life marked by both extraordinary creativity and deep personal struggles. Recently, heartbreaking details have emerged about her health and private world, leaving fans and loved ones deeply concerned. As the widow of John Lennon, Yoko has faced numerous challenges, but what she's enduring now is truly devastating. Here are the latest shocking revelations surrounding this legendary artist. Early life and formative struggles. Born February 18, 1933 in Tokyo, Japan, Yoko Ono came from a family of affluence and reputation. Isuke Ono, her father, was a prosperous banker who gave the family a nice way of life and regular moves, including time spent in the U.S. But the start of World War II seriously disrupted the ease of her early years. The war hung long over Yoko's early years. The Ono family dealt with the hard facts of war as the bombing started. Once a city of relative wealth and safety, Tokyo came under constant attack from aircraft. Yoko's family was obliged to leave the city in an attempt to avoid the growing devastation. Seeking cover from the constant onslaught, they moved to the country. But they came upon extreme shortages of food and resources rather than safety. Once comfortable life of Yoko became daily battle for survival. Previously living in luxury, the Ono family now found themselves suffering conflict. Yoko was thrown into a world where the foundations of life were not assured. Often without the most basic needs, the family had to negotiate their possessions for food. Yoko was greatly affected by the emotional and physical toll these years took. Her perspective was greatly changed by her personal experience of how conflict affects daily life. Yoko's resiliency came through even in such terrible conditions. These early years of suffering gave her an incredible fortitude and flexibility. Though it did not instantly bring her life back to its pre-war state, the end of the war did inspire fresh resolve. After the war, Yoko went back to Tokyo and finished her studies. Her early years' hardship and challenges drove her to explore expression via art. Her avant-garde style reflected her complicated experiences and the war's scars, thereby reflecting her work. Yoko's artwork was a means of expression, but it also helped her to understand her past and share her own viewpoint. Her wartime experiences helped her to be sensitive to the suffering of others and inspired her to question social mores. Her artistic and activism activities would revolve around this need, which also motivates her to investigate unusual and sometimes provocative concepts. Her identity grew mostly on the tenacity she acquired during her early hardships, which shaped her attitude to both her art and her activism. The meeting and marriage to John Lennon. She was already a major player in the avant-garde art world of New York City when Yoko Ono ran across John Lennon. Her art was innovative and unusual, sometimes greeted with perplexed looks or direct rejection. Still, Yoko persisted as she really believed in her artistic vision. Her method was about pushing limits and questioning the established quo. Ideas that would finally get the attention of one of the most well-known musicians worldwide. First meeting in 1966 at a London gallery, John Lennon and Yoko Ono. John, open-minded and curious, visited the preview as Yoko was getting ready for a show of her art. A casual meeting soon evolved into a deep friendship. Yoko's fresh ideas and her original view of art and life enthralled John. He was drawn to her intellectual depth and creative spirit since her presence stood so different from the world of pop music and celebrity he was surrounded by. It became evident as their relationship grew that Yoko was more to John than merely an artist. She was a companion and an inspiration. Their love had grown into a strong and loving marriage by 1969. They were inseparable, and their public appearances together became subject of close media attention. Both of Yoko's fans and detractors blamed her for breaking up the Beatles, a charge that affected them both greatly. The public response to their relationship was divided. Some welcomed their unusual love, while others hated Yoko for what they thought to be a disturbance to the cherished band. John and Yoko stayed constant in their dedication to one another in face of opposition. Their audacious public displays of love and political activity gained them recognition. 1969 saw the most well-known cooperative project they worked on, Bed-Ins for Peace. The couple stayed in bed for a week during these events, to advocate world peace and oppose the Vietnam War. Reflecting their common values and their wish to utilize their celebrity for a more good, the bed-ins were both a political protest and a personal statement. John and Yoko's marriage was surrounded in public debate as well as great love. Their relationship embodied art, politics, and personal connection all mixed together. John would talk about how Yoko motivated him and how their relationship affected his songs quite a bit. Yoko's presence in John's life was unquestionably important, notwithstanding all the criticism they encountered. She was crucial in his creative and personal development, and their relationship stayed the defining feature of their life. Though there were difficulties in their marriage, their relationship was marked by a great connection and respect. Despite great public criticism, John and Yoko's relationship was evidence of their shared vision and dedication to each other. Their time together was a moment of great activism and inventiveness that changed their lives as well as the planet. The assassination of John Lennon. December 8, 1980, Yoko Ono's life fell apart. Outside their New York City apartment, John Lennon, her beloved spouse and artistic collaborator, was cruelly killed. That was a typical evening that became an unfathomable horror. Working on a new album and loving their time with their small son, Sean, John and Yoko had spent the day together. Plans for the future and hope abound that day. But a terrible act suddenly changed everything when they went back to their house at the Dakota, a historic Upper West Side apartment building. A crazy fan named Mark Chapman stopped them as they were walking into the building. Chapman shot John several times, despite his cool head and earlier in the day readiness to sign his autograph. Already in a state of shock, Yoko watched helplessly as her husband was hurried to the hospital in a disorderly scene. Although the news of John's death devastated the globe, for Yoko it was a personal loss that earth-shattering. Dealing with shock, loss, and public scrutiny all at once, she was left to negotiate the immediate aftermath of John's murder. The public coverage and constant intrusion into her personal loss increased the agony of losing John. Yoko struggled with a torrent of emotions in the days after John's death. She had to negotiate funeral plans and face life without the man who had been her everything. The public's obsession with John's death simply heightened her sense of bereavement. Yoko discovered she was not only mourning her spouse but also battling intrusive media and handling public curiosity explosion. Yoko experienced intensely intimate and emotional loss. John was her sole companion and supporter in all spheres of life. Not only a well-known musician, they had dreams, aspirations, and a picture of a better world. There was great void left by his disappearance. After his passing, Yoko battled to find strength and comfort. She threw herself into John's legacy so that his songs and peace message would inspire others going forward. It was a coping mechanism, a means of directing her loss into something honoring John's memory. John's death had a broad effect on Yoko's life. Her grief was even more difficult to manage because of public attention on her at this period. Along with grieving the death of her spouse, she was also struggling to keep her own sanity and identity publicly. John's death signaled the start of a fresh, very demanding chapter in Yoko's life: health battles and aging. Years went by as Yoko Ono battled fresh challenges, this one related to her own health. Aging presented a unique set of problems that compounded already turbulent living. Yoko has battled a range of medical problems recently. A stroke she experienced in 2016 was among the most important ones. One important turning point was this health catastrophe. Having a stroke was a difficult reality for someone who had always been so active and involved. Her stroke affected her mobility and created residual medical issues. Her long and difficult rehabilitation affected her capacity to move and complete everyday duties as she had once been able. For Yoko, especially difficult was losing movement. She had spent much of her life moving freely and working on artistic projects. Her health problems, physical restrictions, were a far cry from the energetic life she had known. It was a challenging and humble change with accompanying emotional difficulties. Yoko had to face the fact of her body no longer working as it had. Yoko battled aging emotionally in addition to the physical challenges. Particularly for someone who had always been so intimately linked with energy, agitation, and artistic invention, It is never easy to accept the changes that accompany growing older. For her, losing freedom and needing help were challenging changes. Yoko's tenacity came through during her health struggles. She persisted in becoming an active member of her community, and advocate of the causes she felt important in spite of the obstacles. Her spirit stayed whole, even as she confronted these fresh, personal difficulties. Using her position, Yoko spread awareness of health concerns and motivated others going through similar challenges. For Yoko, aging, health issues, and the continuous loss over John Lennon produced a complicated terrain. Still, she stayed a monument to fortitude and will through all. Her character has been shown by her capacity to gracefully and boldly meet these challenges. Driven by the same passion and will that had always defined her, Yoko kept meaningfully contributing to the world in spite of all the physical and emotional challenges. Public criticism and misunderstandings. Long a topic of debate and misinterpretation, Yoko Ono has been public criticism and attention frequently focused on her relationship with John Lennon, and the cruel abuse she endured was intensely personal and distressing. From the time Yoko and John Lennon started dating, they were the target of unrelenting rumors and criticism. Though the Beatles was already having internal difficulties before their relationship started, many fans blamed Yoko for the band's split. This guilt went not just missing but also quite destructive. Avant-garde artist with a distinct perspective, Yoko became a handy scapegoat for more complicated, deeper problems inside the band. The public's response was sometimes rather strong, and Yoko was shown as the villain in a narrative where she was only a creative and loving spouse. Yoko suffered much emotionally from this kind of criticism. She was juggling the reality of her spouse being attacked in addition to public outcry. Her image in the media was one of an outsider who had upset the harmony of the adored band. Besides false, this story was quite unfair. Though Yoko made major contributions to music and art, the media's obsession with her personal life eclipsed these. The public's hostile reception continued even beyond the Beatles' separation. Yoko kept under close examination even after John passed away tragically. Sensational headlines and intrusive questioning frequently targeted her anguish. The media seems more fascinated in her personal anguish than in honoring her privacy and recognizing her loss. Yoko found it quite difficult to properly manage her loss during this period, given the constant public and media coverage. Apart from the examination of her personal life, Yoko also suffered criticism on her creative decisions. Often challenging accepted wisdom, her avant-garde work was misinterpreted. Those accustomed to more conventional types of art sometimes responded angrily or with uncertainty to her work. This was about a deeper resistance to the unusual and the foreign, not only about creative inclination. Though Yoko's artwork reflected her experiences and her desire to challenge limits, she was frequently discounted or attacked instead of praised for her inventiveness. This public critique had a major emotional cost. Yoko was a very sensitive and reflective person, hence the continuous negative attention seriously affected her mental and emotional state. She still persevered, though, and she kept pushing for innovation and peace. Her capacity of character is demonstrated by her will to keep on in the face of such hardship. Yoko's encounters with public criticism draw attention to a more general problem: society's inclination to criticize and hold people responsible depending on limited or distorted impressions. Her life was a complicated interaction of public, creative, and personal components, and the severe treatment she experienced was sometimes a mirror of society's anxiety with those complexity. Struggles with legacy management. One of the toughest things Yoko Ono's life has been without John Lennon has been managing his legacy. Yoko, his widow and a major player in his life, has had to negotiate the difficulties of conserving and publicizing John's work in face with the conflicts and accusations that have developed over years. John Lennon left a great legacy, including his innovative music with the Beatles, his solo career, and his peace activism. For Yoko, this legacy weighs both privilege and obligation. She could, on one hand, help to share John's accomplishments with next generations and preserve his memory. She must, however, manage and curate his enormous amount of work while handling different public and personal issues. Managing John's legacy's commercial elements has proved one of Yoko's main difficulties. This covers supervising his music release, image handling, and several initiatives and mementos connected with him. It has been difficult to strike a balance between John's business interests and his need to keep his job integrity. There have been cases where Yoko's vision of respecting his artistic and personal values collided with the commercialization of John's image and songs. Tension with the Beatles and their surviving members has another major problem. John had a complicated connection with the Beatles, and Yoko had to negotiate ties with Ringo Starr, George Harrison, and Paul McCartney following his passing. Often tense, these interactions stemmed from different opinions on how John's legacy should be preserved and honored. For instance, public conflicts and controversies occasionally resulted from the re-release of Beatles songs and the band's collective legacy's treatment. Fans and critics who believe John's work has not been sufficiently maintained or promoted have also attacked Yoko. Some say she has been overly concentrated on her own ideas at John's expense, or too controlling. This criticism has especially hurt since it sometimes overlooks the great efforts Yoko has taken to guarantee John's achievements are honored. Notwithstanding these difficulties, Yoko has put great effort to respect John's memory. She has participated in events including special releases, tributes, and exhibits to help to preserve his music and message. Her great love and respect of John are shown by her will to honor his legacy. Managing John Lennon's legacy is about negotiating the emotional and personal aspects of his remembrance as much as it is about honoring his output. For Yoko, this work entwined with her own path of loss, recovery, and resiliency. Since John's death, her life has been defined in great part by her battle to combine these elements with public and private demands. John Lennon's legacy management by Yoko Ono mirrors the larger difficulties experienced by those left to honor the memory of loved ones who have had a major impact on the planet. This is a difficult and complicated chore that calls for both appreciating their contributions and handling the continuous reality of their absence. The painful estrangement from her daughter. A moving and difficult part in Yoko Ono's life has been her relationship with her daughter Kyoko-chan Cox. Early in the 1970s, mother and daughter started to live apart, and for Yoko, this has caused great emotional upheaval. Yoko's life was turbulent, and her divide with Kyoko began during that time. Following John Lennon's death in 1980, Yoko discovered she was up against both public and personal obstacles. Kyoko was also coping with her own challenges at the same time, including the strain of living in public view and her father, Tony Cox's court cases. Kyoko's abduction by her father in 1971 during a custody conflict accentuated the estrangement. Although Yoko was given custody of Kyoko, their relationship suffered greatly from the ensuing legal and personal strife. Yoko found it challenging to keep a close relationship with her daughter given the stress and strain of the custody dispute, as well as the great media spotlight and personal loss. The separation just deepened as the years passed. Kyoko grew more and more far off, and Yoko's emotional load grew from lack of communication. Though Yoko's attempts to re-establish contact with her daughter yielded differing degrees of success, the emotional gap remained notable. The sense of powerlessness Yoko experienced under the circumstances added to her mental and physical suffering at losing her daughter. Yoko suffered much from the estrangement. Loss of a close bond with her child was a very personal and heart-wrenching event for a mother. It threw still another layer of loss over her already convoluted mental terrain. Challenges greeted Yoko's attempts to reach out and heal their connection, and their continuous distancing caused grief and annoyance. Yoko has showed amazing fortitude in handling her personal conflict in spite of the suffering. She has kept her attention on her job, digesting her feelings and changing the world by means of her art and activity. Though it still hurts, Yoko's isolation from Kyoko has also been a component of her path of resiliency and tenacity. Artistic and personal resilience. Though Yoko Ono's life has presented great personal difficulties, her tenacity has been what really defines her path. She has used her suffering and experiences to drive her art and activity, therefore transforming personal hardship into potent statements of creativity and social transformation. Deeply personal and reflecting her feelings and experiences, Yoko's artwork has she battled great loss and public scrutiny following John Lennon's death, but she turned these emotions into inspiration for her artistic work. Often marked by avant-garde character, her art evolved into a tool for exploring and articulating her emotional terrain. Works like The Grapefruit and her Wish Tree let her communicate her ideas of healing, serenity, and hope. Her activity clearly demonstrated her resilience as well. Using her position, Yoko promoted topics near her heart, including environmental concerns, women's rights, and peace, along with her and John's Bed-ins for Peace, performed during the Vietnam War, were evidence of her dedication to advocacy. Yoko kept up political and social causes even after John passed away, utilizing her voice and clout to confront world problems and advance constructive change. Yoko's will and tenacity are demonstrated by her capacity to turn personal suffering into art and action. From public censure to personal bereavement, she has overcome many obstacles. Nonetheless, she has always found inspiration for her artistic activities and advocacy work in these events. Her resiliency goes beyond simply overcoming adversity to include leveraging such events to motivate others and create significant influence. By means of her art and advocacy, Yoko Ono has shown how strongly creative and social energy may come from personal challenges. Her path shows the ability to turn suffering into purpose, so she is an amazing person in the spheres of activism and art. Yoko Ono's journey is filled with triumphs and challenges. For more updates and untold stories, click on the video popping up on your screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future content.